Hey guys, it's Timmy, and this is Pro Wrestling Unlimited, as we are here on the 29th of July, 2019, to talk about everything that went down on tonight's Monday Night Raw. And, to be honest, I thought the show was pretty good for the most part. Now, the 24/7 title stuff was a little odd, but hey, it happens. Let's let a couple more of you guys jump up here in the live chat while it does load. Looking at it here, we do got Jeff Guevara. We do have Devin the Newfie Boy. Got Makia Germain. Hope I said that right. Jay Shaggy. Henry McKenna Carvalho. Fully Clutch. What's going on, everybody? So just looking at the chat for a second again, letting some people get in here before we do start talking about tonight's Monday Night Raw. What did you guys think of tonight's Raw? I thought it was a better show than normal, that's for sure. But it still had its ups and its downs. Like, every week's shows. And it started off, we'll just kick it off now. So the show starts off, and there's a bunch of wrestlers around the ring. They're all out there for what they called the 24/7 Championship Mosh Pit Mixed Tag Match. And I'm like, what kind of damn name is that? Like, what kind of name? Whoever thought of that name, whether it was Heyman or somebody else, what were you thinking? Because that name just made absolutely no sense whatsoever. Again, let me reiterate. 24/7 Mosh Pit, 24/7 Championship Mosh Pit Mixed Tag Team Match. What? So the match was 24/7 champion. I take that back. 24/7 champion, R-Truth, and Carmella against Drake Maverick and Renee Michelle with the title on the line. Also, before you go on, I want to ask you guys in the chat, does my audio sound better than normal? I did some tweaking, and I just want to know if what I did sounds better. Justin Christoph, happy birthday. Henry says, it was just a lumberjack match, basically. But they wanted to be cool and call it a mosh pit. So usual group of wrestlers were out there. All the guys that normally run after the 24/7 champion. Truth won the match relatively quickly. Afterwards, he was surrounded because they said, okay, once the match is over, back in effect, you can get attacked by anybody. You could lose your belt. And then all these guys jump in the ring at one time. And what do? They just dogpile Truth. And the guy on the bottom, Mike Kanellis, is there. Cool. So the referee counts 1, 2, 3. And then Mike scurries out with the belt. And so, cool. Mike Kanellis is the champion. And I thought this was going to lead to tomorrow night's 205 Live with Drake Maverick and Mike Kanellis in a non-sanctioned match. And then somehow 24/7 champion Mike Kanellis had to put his title on the line against the GM of 205 Live. I thought that's where it was going to lead to. But no, it did not lead to that. So Mike runs to the back. I might be getting ahead of myself, actually. He runs to the back. He runs into this room that says WWE officials on it. And he, locks the door. And we find out, excuse me, it's just a normal locker room. And so they're all banging on the door. And finally someone bangs, and it's his wife, Maria. And she's like, let me in. And he's like, no. She's like, Michael Kanellis, let me in. He's like, how do I know it's you? And not Carmella pretending to be you. And I swear to God, she says, you let me in or I'm going to break this door down and kick you in your vagina. And my first thought was, because he opened the door immediately, and my first thought was, Has she threatened that before? To kick him in his vagina? I don't know what to think of that. So, that's the first 10 minutes of Raw. That was the first 10 minutes of the show. And so we go in, and the next thing we get is a gauntlet match, which is actually pretty good. Winner goes on to face AJ Styles for the U.S. title at SummerSlam. So the first match in the gauntlet match was Rey Mysterio versus Cesaro, and that went 11 minutes. Mysterio used a Hurricane Rana to send Cesaro outside of the ring, but Cesaro held on, landed on his feet. Mysterio managed to send him into the side of the ring and hit a sliding splash. Mysterio sent Cesaro over the barricade, and they went to commercial. They aired replays during the commercial break where Cesaro took over by powerbombing Mysterio into the post. Mysterio came back with a senton and kicked Cesaro in the face. Cesaro caught Mysterio off the ropes with an uppercut for a near fall and a big boot for 2. Mysterio went to the top, but Cesaro cut him off with an uppercut. Cesaro tried something, but Mysterio countered it into a bulldog off the top, followed up with a 619 frog splash. Boom, Cesaro, you're out of here. Rey continues. Out comes Sami Zayn. Zayn ran out and attacked Mysterio as he was down, and the crowd booed. Zayn went for a haluva kick, and Mysterio countered into a small package. Quick win, maybe minute and a half, if that. So there's no more. I mean, this couldn't have been no more, like I said, a minute and a half max, if not just a minute. Zayn complained to the referees as Andrade and Zelina would come out next. And this went about 5 minutes. I thought at first it felt a little longer to me, but I liked this because Andrade and Rey together are always good. Andrade hit a triple vertical suplexes, did the Eddie Guerrero pose. He then hit a standing moonsault for a 2. Crowd chanted for Mysterio, who went for a 619, and Andrade caught him and hit him with the backbreaker, followed it up with the hammerlock DDT, and actually pinned Rey. So Rey loses, and then Andrade continues to put the boots to him for some reason. He then rips the mask of Rey Mysterio, and out would come Ricochet, who was supposed to have the final match in this series. So Ricochet was all over Andrade and was about to go for a dive, but stopped him when Zelina got in the way. Ricochet fought off Andrade, but Andrade distracted the referee. Vega grabbed Ricochet's leg, and Andrade kicked him off the apron. Ricochet came back with a rolling front dropkick. Ricochet charged, but Andrade hip tossed him into the turnbuckle. He then followed it up with running knees into the corner for 2. Ricochet used a small package for 2. Andrade caught him with the back elbow, and Ricochet followed that up with the reverse Rana, spiking Andrade for a near fall. Ricochet then fought Andrade off the top rope, hit the 630, and pinned him #1 contender. Crowd was happy that Ricochet won this match, and I thought overall this was good. Afterwards, Caleb Braxton interviewed Ricochet. He said people couldn't believe it when he beat Samoa Joe for the title in the first place, and they're not going to believe it when he defeats AJ at SummerSlam. He said that he's going to win the title back. They cut to a shot of AJ Styles in the back, watching on a TV and laughing. So we go backstage, and it's Mike and Maria. And Maria's like, lay down. He's like, wait, what? Huh? Or she's like, on your back. He's like, what? She's like you always do, lay on your back. And he's like, what are you talking about? And she's like, I'm going to pin you for that title so that our unborn child can say that one of their parents was a champion. Just belittling Mike like he didn't just win the title. Like she's not winning the title from him. And reluctantly he does it, lays down. She puts her foot on him. She's like, referee. And ref counts 1, 2, 3. She takes the title. So she walks out of this locker room and she's looking at all these men. And she's like, well, first she screams, first ever pregnant champion. And she walks out of the locker room. She's looking at all these men and go, I'm the 24/7 champion. pregnant champion, first pregnant champion, first pregnant champion, first pregnant champion. And they're all like, well, we can't touch her. What the fuck are they going to do now? It's either she never loses this damn belt, or she's going to like walk into a room, you're going to hear commotion, and someone's going to walk out the champion. Like we saw last week when Drake Maverick pinned Ted DiBiase in the limo to win the 24/7 title. Unless there was someone on Twitter that suggested lights go out, lights come back on, and Bray had pinned her. I don't know. So then we get a moment of bliss. Really not needed-ish. Well, I mean, I take that back. It at first seemed like it wasn't needed, but it made sense in the end. So Bliss started off by congratulating Maria on becoming a pregnant champion, saying, we're making moves for women all over. They spoke about the Raw reunion last week. Bliss agreed that with Stone Cold Steve Austin, stating that we're all a big family, and that Dolph Ziggler disappointed everybody when he attacked Shawn Michaels on SmackDown. And they brought this up so many times about Dolph super kicking Shawn Michaels, and now Seth is going to get revenge for Shawn. Like, Shawn's an old, decrepit old man that can't fight him for himself. He just fought in Saudi Arabia 8 months ago. Anyways, I digress. She said that she had a moral compass, and then she brought up some clips from earlier in the day. So they showed Natty in the ring training with some random girls and Fit Finlay. Out would come Becky. She would attack Fit and then put Natty in the disarmor. They come back and the crowd's actually cheering, and Alexa's appalled by that. She said that you shouldn't condone that kind of behavior. Bliss said that she would beat Lynch tonight. Lynch appeared on the big screen and warned Bliss not to injure herself by turning her head and turning too quickly. Lynch offered a warning to both Cross and Bliss. Usos would then come out, cut a quick promo during their entrance, and we got a tag team title match. It was Usos, Gallows, and Anderson challenging the Revival. Match went about 17 and a half minutes. First few minutes involved only the Revival and the Usos, and they played it up as far as if the OC can't get in, they can't have an opportunity to win. And I liked that. It was like they got to find a way to get themselves tagged in, because these other teams, like the Usos, want to stay in, want to keep it between them, so that way they never have an opportunity to not win. I liked that early on. Finally, after about the 6-minute mark, Jey Uso was sent to the outside, and Gallows booted him. Gallows finally got tagged in. After commercial break, the OC worked over Jey. Gallows hammered on him, and Renee Young said, I think people are going to be taking the OC seriously now. And I'm like, I don't know about the name. It's just, they can be the OC as a group, but they don't need to keep saying it. Just but Gallows and Anderson. Gallows and Anderson. Jey fought out of a rest hold and tagged in Jimmy, who ran wild on the Revival. Jimmy pushed Dash Wilder into Scott Dawson and followed it up with Samoan drop for a near fall. Dawson made the blind tag and gave Jimmy a Steinerizer, but Anderson broke up the cover. Everyone took turns hitting their big moves and everyone ended up on the outside. Jimmy then gave Dawson a superplex off the top rope to everybody on the floor. Dawson avoided a diving splash by Jimmy Uso, then Gallows tagged himself in. Revival gave Jimmy the Shatter Machine. Then Jey took them both out with a high cross. Anderson then gave Jey a spine buster, and the OC gave Jimmy a magic killer to actually pin him and become the new Raw Tag Team Champions. So, AJ, Gallows, Anderson, the OC, all got titles now. Marcus Ryan in the chat says, Tim, did the network update fix on Roku? It's a lot better. It's the same across the board now. You're missing a few things on the computer, on the desktop version of the WWE Network, like the Superstar pages. But as far as the PlayStation, the Roku, Amazon Fire, it's all the same app now, and it works a lot better. Other than, I don't know if it's been fixed, because I haven't watched anything live since Smackville, but the audio was off. Enough to where the referee would count a second, and by the time he'd go down for the second, then you'd hear the sound for the first pin. Like the first. It would be like 1, 2. It would be off a lot. So I don't know if they've fixed that. The audio was off on the live portion, so we'll see. They announced that tomorrow Trish Stratus will be on SmackDown with Jerry Lawler. And on Wednesday, Roderick Strong will be facing Pete Dunne. Backstage, Kayla Braxton found AJ Styles, who prepared a table of food and champagne for his buddies, the new champs. She was about to interview him, but Gallows and Anderson stormed in, and they all hugged and cheered and celebrated. Styles jumped on the table, ruining the food, of course, grabbed a bottle of champagne, but was too excited to open it. He excitedly offered them a plate of sushi instead. And I mean, I'd never seen AJ more happy. They had a recap of Raw Reunion. John Cena's lines about the Usos was not included. They also replayed Ziggler super kicking Michaels on SmackDown. We then got the Viking Raiders against Cole Carter and Johnny James. Minute and a half. Of course, Viking Raiders killed them. Then I liked Michael Cole was basically like, we got new tag champions in the OC. I'd like to see the OC versus the Viking Raiders. So maybe that's forthcoming. Street Profits in the back. They're just hype bros, basically. Hype guys. They're just hyping things up. Angelo Dawkins wondered why Maria won the 24/7 title. Montez Ford told him that she's untouchable because she's pregnant. And Dawkins goes, pregnant. And Ford goes, wait, what? He's like, Maria kind of teased that Mike may not be the daddy. Are you the daddy? And he's like, Tiz, what? Why would you even suggest that? Seth Rollins would then show up. They were all happy. They're happy to see Seth. Seth was happy to see them. They said that the whole locker room was behind him beating Ziggler tonight because Ziggler disrespected Shawn Michaels. Montez Ford was about to yell burn it down, and Seth stopped him, and then they all yelled it together. Cringeworthy. Very bad. Wrestling Geek Club asked me to rate this Raw out of 10. I'd give it an 8. 7.5 to an 8. I could say 8 confidently. 7.5 because a couple things were like, what? So we'll see. So we got Raw Women's Champion Becky Lynch against Alexa Bliss. And this is one of those things that could waver that half a point. Crowd loudly chanted for Lynch at the start of this match. She put her hands behind her back and offered Bliss the first shot. Bliss hesitated before throwing a punch, but Lynch blocked it and took her down. Bliss yanked her into the ropes and distracted the referee so Cross could attack her. So eventually at one point in this match, there's no point to talk about the rest of this match. At one point, Alexa quote-unquote gets hurt to where her ankle's all messed up. They call...
I don't know that one.
Whoopsie. I always got to remember to turn that thing off, especially when we're talking Raw. So Alexa's playing it up. She's crying that her ankle hurts. Doctors looking at her, and they're like, she can't compete. She can't go. She's hurt. And so they keep her at ringside. They don't try to bring her to the back. Mike Rome says Becky Lynch or Alexa Bliss can't compete. And Nikki Cross jumps on the apron, and she goes, you and me, Alexa, or no, Becky, you and me, Becky. Let's go, you and me, you and me. And so we go to commercial, and we come back, and it's Becky versus Nikki Cross. What a fucking way to get to, quote-unquote, no wrestling during the commercial. Are you kidding me? So we get Nikki Cross versus Becky Lynch. And again, not much happened here other than Natty ends up coming out. So Becky had won. And before she can even celebrate, Natty attacks her, puts her in the sharpshooter. Go to the back. And she's approached by Kayla Braxton. And she says, the pursuit of a championship has ruined many friendships. And Natty's basically just like, our friendship was damaged already. I want to challenge. She's like, I want to challenge Becky Lynch to a submission match. My superior sharpshooter to her inferior disarmer. And she goes, but we're not going to do that because I know she won't accept. And I'm like, what? Why tease it and then not? What? Very weird. Then the most weird thing. Maria's doing a photo shoot. with her new belt, and Braun Strowman appears. And she's like, "You're crowding me. I'm pregnant. Please don't stand so close to me." And he growled at her. And then she was just like, basically, "Show me how much of a man you can be," and they cut away. I'm like, what? And so we get Seth Rollins versus Dolph Ziggler. Match ends in a disqualification. Good match. Before the match started, Ziggler came out pretending to be Shawn Michaels music, Shawn Michaels entrance. And the two had a pretty good match. Went through a commercial break. Rollins fired up and gave Ziggler a rolling elbow and a sling blade. He followed later with a Falcon Arrow. Ziggler tossed Rollins shoulder first into the post twice and nailed a zigzag for 2. So as they're going, Ziggler set him up for the sweet chin music, but Rollins caught him and then gave him a super kick of his own. Rollins then set him up for the stomp when Brock Lesnar's music would hit. Lesnar and Heyman would come down. Ziggler grabbed Rollins' leg, and Lesnar jumped into the ring and attacked him. He gave Rollins a German suplex and repeatedly tossed him to the barricade. Lesnar then gave him an F5 into the ring post. Lesnar nailed Rollins with a steel chair, then sat down on the chair in the ring. With the chair still upright in the upright position, Lesnar gave him an F5 or ribs first on it. Lesnar set the chair up again and gave him another F5. Lesnar would then post with the belt. Blood began dripping out of Seth's mouth. And Heyman's basically like, stop, enough, stop. And so finally Brock gets out, and they have to bring a stretcher down for Seth. And the funny thing is, last week on the investor call, Vince was like, we don't need to do blood on television. We don't need, gory looking things. And what do they do tonight? Seth's bleeding. Okay. So the announcers talked about how they were disgusted with Brock. Corey Graves told the crew to stop showing replays. EMTs helped Rollins onto a stretcher, and they brought him to the back. Really good segment here. I liked it. So after the break, Rollins was being taken through the back on the stretcher. Becky Lynch was seen looking at him on the stretcher. The Usos, Roman Reigns. And so they put him in to the ambulance. And all of a sudden there's a commotion. And OC are attacking the Usos. And Joe is attacking Roman. So as the ambulance is getting ready to leave, all of a sudden it doesn't go anywhere. And the camera cuts to in front of it, and there's Brock. And Brock's like, don't go anywhere. Talking to the guy driving the ambulance. So Brock goes to the back of the ambulance, and he pulls Seth Rollins out on the stretcher. So Seth goes flying out of this ambulance, still on the stretcher. And as he's just flying through this backstage area, he unclips himself off the stretcher and falls off. So the stretcher's laying on its side with like its metal bars and all that sticking up. And Brock grabs Seth Rollins and literally gives him an F5, ribs first and all. He doesn't give him just a normal F5. No, he literally throws him up in the air and just lets him fall right ribs first onto the stretcher. Like, I could have seen this maybe on the padded part of the stretcher and be okay. But man, that looked like it had to hurt Seth a lot. So we were supposed to get this, quote unquote, before I digress, before this, it was weird. So the Usos and Roman were laid out backstage. Come back from commercial, and there's a pre-tape segment with the Usos interviewing Roman about his Hobbs and Shaw movie. Kind of weird. Should have done it earlier in the night. It's all good, though. So then we're supposed to get the Samoan Summit. Supposed to be Samoa Joe, Roman Reigns coming out, and Joe comes out, and he says the Summit's been canceled. He didn't want to come out here and talk anyways. He wanted to fight. He called out Roman Reigns, said, let's finish this, and Reigns would come out, and the two would brawl. Joe tossed him into the steps. Roman tossed the steps at the face of Samoa Joe. McIntyre would then come out and attack Roman Reigns. He fought him off, brawled around the ring, brawled in the crowd for a second, and Joe jumped in. They got the advantage on Roman. Cedric Alexander would then come out and fight off McIntyre. Joe decked him with a clothesline. McIntyre tossed him into the video boards. Joe and McIntyre were about to put Reigns through the announce table when the Usos would actually make the save. Then Anderson and Gallows would then come out for some reason. As everyone brawled, Alexander dove literally off the top of the set, like as high up as he could have climbed, and it looked cool. He dove, I don't even know how tall that's got to be, 10, 15 feet up, maybe? Right on top of everybody, took everybody out. So, back in the ring, Usos came down, gave Samoa Joe a super kick, both of them together simultaneously. Reigns then hit him with the spear. Cedric Alexander would come into the ring, and they would all celebrate as Graves wondered about the condition of Seth Rollins. And that was Monday Night Raw. Pretty good show overall. Couple of weird things. Like, I didn't like the whole Alexa fake injury thing just to get to a commercial. And the Maria Braun thing was just the weirdest thing ever. So with that, I want to say thank you to everybody who did join me here tonight to talk about Monday Night Raw. Thank you for watching later here on YouTube, or watching, or I should say listening on podcast services all around the world like SoundCloud, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Play Music, and iTunes. We'll be live again tomorrow night following SmackDown Live. Have a good night, guys. We'll see you then.